Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this session about the Foundation 101. This session is really to try to provide you with an overview of what the Rotary Foundation of Rotary International is all about. I think we've got a small enough group that, I want this to be a little more interactive so that we can keep awake during the program. I've got a program that I wanted to share today. Was actually I was going to use the availability of the Learning Center. When you go to Rotary.org and you go to My Rotary and log in, you can go to Members, and then there's a section called the Learning Center. And there's a whole bunch of really awesome little courses on various topics, and one of them is called Foundation Basics. And I was going to use that today as my slides, but when I went on there at 7:30, evidently that site is going through maintenance today until 1 o'clock. So, we're just going to muddle through. I've got a program that I like to do for clubs. I'm not going to do that exactly like I normally do it, but I wanted to kind of give you an example of what I do with clubs. I don't really feel like in this room I'm necessarily going to try to motivate people in this room to give to the foundation. I think most of us are probably, this is sort of like preaching to the choir. But I believe that there is some confusion about the foundation. And the reason why I believe that is that as a organization, we have less than 40% of our members who are credited for any kind of contributions to the foundation. And one of the things you will notice if you look at major donors and multiple Paul Harris Fellows, there's a lot of people who are great and generous to the foundation at a high level. And a lot of them are people like myself who happen to have served as a district governor. And one of the things that I hear people say sometimes is, well, you must have really drank the Kool-Aid. I don't like that phrase a lot. I think that's kind of a nasty thing to say, but I understand the purpose of it is that people who supposedly drink the Kool-Aid in organizations are the ones who learn something. And maybe they learned something in the process of their jobs or their vocation or their activities that made them want to participate in at some level. I think if you talk to a lot of past district governors, when you've been in that role for a while, you're basically getting inundated with a lot of information about all things Rotary and a lot of things about the foundation. It's almost like a fire hose introduction. And we then turn around and we use jargon like DDF and things like PDGs and all these just things that we talk about. And so when we're into our clubs, you got to remember that most people in the club, 80% of those people have never been in leadership at that level, and they don't necessarily relate to some of the things that people who are club presidents and club chairs and assistant governors and governors like to say. So I'm going to try to bring it down to something pretty basic today. What I'm going to try to do is go over what is the foundation all about and how individuals can participate at different levels in the foundation. You heard one level earlier today when John Gibbons was discussing the global grants programs. And of course, the global grants programs are sort of the miracle things that Rotary does worldwide in different places where big projects need to be done. There's also things that we do locally, and we're going to get into a little conversation about that now, and then later in about 10:45, Bonnie Stiles will begin her presentation on how the club grants program works. But I wanted to refer you to a couple of publications. This one, there we go. Okay, this one here is the Rotary Foundation Guide. I have some printed ones of these, but they've stopped printing them because you can go online and get an online version of this, a PDF of it for free. It's a booklet. Just if you go to Rotary.org and you search under Rotary Foundation Guide, you'll be able to pull this up. And this is probably one of the better pieces that just sort of gives you an overview of what the foundation is all about. And I use this as a resource that you can follow up with. It goes into what Polio Plus is about. It goes into the Peace Scholarships, tells you about the grants, what grants are available, and resources for alumni, foundation funding. It gives you all kinds of information on how the recognition programs work, how you get to be a Paul Harris Fellow, how you get to be a major donor, and then how your club can qualify for banners. So that's a great piece. It's available online. The other thing I think that's sometimes useful to look at least once a year, Rotary publishes its fact sheet, and now that's available online too. If you go to the Rotary.org site, you'll see how much money is being spent. You'll see how these dollars that we send to the Rotary Foundation are being used, and you'll see what kind of good that they do in the world. Let me give you a general update of how we're doing year to date. Back in February, I sent out a challenge, and it's an offer I called it March Matchness, because we were just about to embark on March Madness, and last year we got gypped out of a March Madness because of COVID. So I thought it might be fun to use that in the title. I may have confused some people because it wasn't just for the month of March, but if you read on what I offered, I went around to major donors and other people in the district who have a lot of points. And I'm going to go over points a little bit today. I think that's a kind of a fun thing to talk about. These recognition points, anytime you make a contribution to any of the organizational funds within the Rotary Foundation, whether it's the annual fund, it's the polio fund, any global grants that you support, or if you make contributions to the endowment, all that money that goes in that's credited to you gives you a shadow account, which it calls points, recognition points available to transfer. You can't take these down to McDonald's and get a cheeseburger with them, but what you can do is you can transfer those points to any individual, posthumously or alive, that you want to recognize with a Paul Harris Fellow recognition. I think it's kind of a perk, and it took me a long time to figure out how to use it. I've been giving away points lately more than I've been putting into the program, and it's been a lot of fun. But one of the things that I think it's been kind of confusing, because when I went through this and did a little bit of a audit of how many points we had available in the district, we had some clubs that had a whole lot of points that they could use as a club because of contributions that they sent in as a club. You know, if you do Happy Bucks or you do polio fundraising in your club and you send checks into the Rotary Foundation, those get credited to your club. So some clubs had thousands of points available that they could use for matching. I think I even had one club that had over 47,000 of these points. If you give 1,000 points to somebody, you can make that individual a Paul Harris Fellow. It doesn't have to be a Rotarian. I wish I'd have known about this program or understood it better 10 years ago. I had a lot of good old high school teachers I would have maybe liked to have recognized with an award like a Paul Harris Fellow. The Paul Harris Fellow recognition itself is not the Nobel Peace Prize. It's not meant to be anything more than a nice gesture that you give to somebody, that you thank them for being a person who's helped your community or humanity in general. I think we all know dozens and dozens of people that you think would be worthy of such a designation. One of the things I've enjoyed this past year is calling donors and thanking them for their contributions and hearing how they like to use their points. I had one individual, I think he's maybe in the room right now, who decided he wanted to, he's a pastor, he decided he wanted to give a Paul Harris Fellow designation to a person in his church who was 102 years old, that was a very active member of the church even still today. So we were able to, I used some of my own points to match his contribution, and I believe that by now that the Paul Harris Fellow designation should have arrived in the individual's hands so he can present that if he hasn't done so already. I've heard touching stories about how people give Paul Harris Fellows to their kids, their grandkids, everybody. So it's a perk. It's a nice perk. You can also use it within your club. I know people our Rotary district who have used their own points to motivate members of their club to get to the next Paul Harris level, so that we get more of our own Rotarians to the level where they have at least their first Paul Harris Fellow designation. So don't take the Paul Harris Fellow program so seriously that you put it on such a pedestal that you think people need to really become super duper people before you're going to give them the honor of being a Paul Harris Fellow. We have all kinds of awards that we can give to Rotarians, but use it as a nice gesture. You'll get a few tears of joy from the people that you care about. My purpose, and I was governor 2 years ago, and there's a couple things you can do after you get done being governor. One thing you can do is what they call one and done, and that's where you get so tired and you get done with being a governor, you just decide, okay, I'm done. I'll just be a Rotarian. I'll just show up at meetings and I'll pay my dues. Or you can continue to do more things in Rotary. I decided I wanted to do something more after I got done being a governor. And one of the things I really enjoyed was being involved with the foundation efforts. And to kind of convey how I felt about that, I want to do a little program here, if you don't mind. This is a program that I have shared in clubs, and I'm not going to give you the exact version of it because I'm going to try to tailor it to this room, because I don't really want to make you feel too crazy. But this program that I do is called How to Be Happy for 27 cents a day. That's the name of the program that I like to do. Now, how can you be happy for 27 cents a day? People would ask me that. Well, that's what I'm going to tell you about. One of the things I think Rotarians sometimes feel like when you constantly ask them for money, they think of themselves as human ATM machines. If you get to a point where you're asking people for money and asking and asking and asking and expecting money, and you don't provide emotional benefit for doing that sort of thing, people can feel like they're used or they're put upon. But in fact, we do provide resources, time, energy, and money to help what we're trying to do or accomplish in Rotary. When you think about Rotary itself, this is a quote from Paul Harris. He once said that the foundation upon which Rotary is built is friendship. On no less firm foundation could it have stood. If you're asking for money when you're not building friendship, you're making a mistake. But if we use friendship to do good, you're making a miracle. Why do I stay in Rotary? I stay in Rotary right now because of the friendships I have with other people. As Ryan said earlier, when I started in Rotary, I was 29 years old. And that was 31 years ago. And, I didn't know anybody in that room when I first walked into my first Rotary meeting, except the person who invited me. And, I'm not a shy person, but it is a little intimidating when you walk into a room of strangers, try to assimilate into that whole vibe. Now I have so many friends locally in this area, and even people that I never met personally, but I now am friends with on Facebook because of this Rotary connection in places like India and Africa and Europe and everywhere else. Never would have thought that could have possibly happened. The other reason I stay in Rotary is because of the fellowship. The fellowship is defined as a company of people that share the same interest or aim. Even though we're all in different professions, we all have a common interest of wanting to make the better world. And the third reason I stay in Rotary is because of the word hope. Rotary gives me hope. It gives me a feeling or an expectation and a desire for a certain thing to happen. That's a noun. But it also makes it, I hope, better because I actively want something to happen or be the case. You can sit at home and hope things get better. You can sit at home and hope the weather gets better. You can sit at home and hope that COVID goes away. Well, in Rotary, you can actually do something about these things. And at some point in time in my life, somebody taught me this theory. It's called 3 pots. There's things in your life that you can control. There's things that are next to your life that you can influence. And there's a whole lot of stuff that you cannot control and you cannot influence. Politics is number 3 to me. I can't control it. Maybe I can influence it with people that care about me. I don't want to go there. There are things that I can influence. There are things that I can control. Mostly what I can influence and control is me. And I want people to understand that in Rotary, you get a chance to be yourself. You don't have to just be your profession. You don't have to be your mom's kid. You don't have to be your brother's brother. You're just yourself. And you get to self-actualize. If you have taken any kind of motivational classes, one of the things that you probably remember, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is something they taught in the 1980s. The needs are things like security, comfort. Once you get down to the thing at the top, it's self-actualization. Very few of us get a chance to do the things that we want to do in life. And Rotary gives us a chance to do that and do that better. And one of the things that Harvard or UCLA discovered is they actually did a study and they found out that human brains are hardwired to be generous. When you are generous, it lights up your prefrontal cortex, which is the same part of your brain that gets lit up when you take drugs. But this is a good kind of drug. This is everything that you need to know about the Rotary Foundation. This slide here. What's on this slide? Somebody, what am I trying to say? Anybody got an answer here? And you can unmute and give me the answer. Give up? Everything you need to know about the Rotary Foundation is that it's based on a grants model. It's a grants model. Everything that Rotary does is based on grants. And of course, that's Cindy Crawford, great model, a couple of grants there. I hope you thought that was funny. I just came up with that this morning. And if you had an app on your phone that could do this kind of stuff, let's say your app on your phone could promote peace. Rotary Foundation fosters understanding among cultures with things like youth exchange, our peace centers, our peace universities. We train adults and young leaders to prevent and mediate conflict. We teach people how to be diplomats. We help refugees who have fled dangerous areas to stay alive and be safe. And we're not just hoping for peace, we're making peace. We fight diseases. We fight so many diseases. I mean, we've almost eliminated polio. It's getting to the point where we're almost ready to celebrate. Did you know that year to date, right now, we've had not one, but only 2 wild polio cases on the face of the earth. One of them was on January 1st. So I really think that should count for last year, but we've had 2 year to date, one in Pakistan, one in Afghanistan. Maybe COVID has helped us get rid of polio. I hope that's a purpose in this whole COVID thing. We fight diseases, not just polio. We're active with things like AIDS prevention, malaria. We're working on things with Alzheimer's, MS, diabetes, and we provide health education, and we provide screening, hearing, and vision care in places where people cannot afford that sort of thing. What are we doing with COVID? This is a slide that I did earlier this year. And when we got up to June 23rd, and you remember COVID really didn't start popping up on the planet until about February of last year. But in that first 4 months, we had already spent over $20 million to help communities respond to COVID. We provided things like frontline healthcare workers. We provided PPE. We provided ventilators. We've also done the soft things like just keeping in touch with people who are shut-ins and can't get out. I noticed one of the programs that I really thought was awesome here in our area is the Pike County Club used a literacy grant in a creative way to build mini libraries to provide libraries of local historical information for the nursing homes for low-income people in Pike County, so that while they were basically stuck in the lockdown mode, they have more things that they could read and study and enjoy. That's the kind of stuff we've done. We also provide clean water. I'm sitting here drinking a bottle of water that costs $1.80 or something like that. What a waste of money. But we don't just build water wells. We don't just walk away from people. We actually integrate water, sanitation, and hygiene into our education. We keep kids in school because they have clean water. We provide access to quality medical care, sanitation, education, economic opportunities so mothers and children can live and grow stronger and live better lives. We provide support for education. 775 million people on this planet do not know how to read, and we're providing basic information and literacy so that we can help reduce gender disparity and create adult literacy. And growing local economies. You know, the economy here has been difficult, and we've probably suffered. I know several folks have probably suffered this year. Businesses have been destroyed in our country this past year at a pretty high clip. But there's 800 million people on this planet who live on less than $1.90 per day. I don't think anybody in Rotary in West Central Illinois is part of that group. So we're providing things to places to provide sustainable solutions to poverty. This was the moment that they shared here. I don't know if you can still see this screen. I'm going to show you the picture that John, hopefully it'll pop up here. There, that you see the picture of the two ladies in the screen with the corn? Is that what are you seeing that? No, you're not seeing that. Okay, I knew that might not work because
I also have that if you want, Brian. I'd have to bring it up, but go ahead.
That's okay. I think I'll just save some time. John, you've alluded to that. The program that we did 2 years ago that's continuing is providing education, where we sent a team of agricultural professionals to the country of Zambia, which is it's southern part of Africa. If you don't know where Zambia is, I didn't really know where it was until we did this. And we sent a team to Zambia a couple of years ago, led by Eric Dobert, and all the coordination of that was helped by Lee Mullaney here locally. We sent some kids, or these folks, to help corn farmers in Zambia learn how to plant corn using locally available materials. We didn't ship them a bunch of hybrid seeds that would just take off that they couldn't get locally. We provided them with education, basic stuff like how to plant, the depth to plant, how far apart to plant, how to use water better. And as a result of that, during a drought year, they had a 240%, I believe, better crop than their neighbors who did not participate in the program. That got people's attention. So now we're going to be going back in as soon as we can, probably later this year, to help these farmers learn how to not just be subsistence farmers where they grow corn for just their own family, but also to help them learn how to market their products so that they can make a little money and improve their lives. So our grants can help us locally, but they also help local projects too. This is my favorite one that I get to go see next Tuesday. I haven't seen it in person. This is the topiary Abe that was just put up in the front of the Macomb City Hall, or I think this is the county building there. Is everybody seeing the topiary Abe? Okay, good. I'm glad that you're seeing it. I love this. I think that's going to be one of those things that people will jump out of their car and they'll want to go get a picture with it. I think they're already starting to call it Chia Abe. I think that's awesome. I think Abe Lincoln would probably think that was awesome if he could see it himself, because I think Abe had a pretty good sense of humor. Now, the seventh area of focus that your little app would do, if you could pay 27 cents a day for it, would be to support the environment. This is a new initiative within Rotary, which is going to be providing global grant projects that will now be accepted for projects that are related to supporting the environment. So when we do things at Rotary, this is what we do. This is our primary focus: promoting peace, fighting disease, providing clean water, supporting education, saving women and children, and growing local economies, helping the environment. If I had to cap, this is hard to remember 7 things. I really think that the biggest thing we do is promoting peace. All of these other things support peace. If you have clean water and your neighbor doesn't have clean water, your neighbor might want to come over and kill you. If everybody has clean water, your neighbor won't want to come over and kill you. If we have kids that are safe, and we have mothers that are safe, it makes a more peaceful world. If we have educated people, it's a more peaceful world. That gives me hope. So if you had an app that could do all of those things and it only cost you 27 cents a day, wouldn't you do it? That's the message that I'm trying to deliver to everybody in this organization. What really drives me absolutely crazy bonkers, I can't stand it, is the fact that we're running everything we do with our grants program, our district designated fund, and our contributions to the World Fund. We're doing it with less than 30% of the members in this district. And I know damn well that at least 90% of the members in this district are people that give money to charities all the time. All I'm trying to do is get them to think, hey, 27 cents a day, I can do that. I don't even care if you give them 27 cents a day. 25 bucks a year makes me happy. I know everybody in this room today is not part of that other group, but I need your help to widen the scope of this group. If we could get everybody in this district to give a little something every year, wouldn't we have a lot more money to do things with? And I don't want to poo-poo what we've actually done. This is some data that I wanted to share with you. Even with less than 40% of our members giving on a regular basis and clubs giving on a regular basis, we have given in the last 8 years, $231,353 in district grants to your clubs. 38 of the clubs in this district, there currently are 47 clubs, I believe. 38 clubs have at least gotten one grant from this program since 2015. 2 clubs are so good at getting these grants, and they do it every year. They have a system, and they're like a machine. Jacksonville and Pike County have gotten a grant every year. There's all kinds of clubs that could have gotten a grant every year, but you didn't always remember to apply for a grant every year. We've also given out $162,500 in scholarships for really great high school or college kids.
Hi, Gilbert.
Our district scholarship program.
Hi, Bill.
Yes,
Bill,
good morning.
it was a bingo success.
Bill, mute yourself, please.
Oh, good.
Hey, Bill, can you mute? Thank you, sir. I'm glad it was a bingo. Good job, Bill. Anyway, we'll move on, but I think that's pretty impressive. I also want to explain a little bit about some of the minutiae within how the Rotary Foundation works. We have this thing called the SHARE program, and the SHARE system basically works like this. Well, let's step back. The annual fund is actually also known as the SHARE fund. SHARE, I believe, is an acronym, but it describes what we use. There's other aspects to the Rotary Foundation, like End Polio Now. There's the Endowment, which is when you decide to make a contribution to Rotary Foundation, either as a individual donor now while you're alive, or as a posthumous gift. That the money that goes into the Endowment fund stays at Rotary permanently, and the district gets some of the interest off of that money depending on how you set it up. Last year, we got about $12,000 towards our district grant from interest from individuals in our district who've given money over many years. That's becoming a pretty meaningful thing. It represents about $2 million that's in Rotary that will never be spent, but we can use that interest. The one other aspect of Rotary that's now a permanent thing, it's relatively new, but it was something that would come up year after year, is the thing called the Disaster Recovery Fund. This is where if you decide in general, you like supporting recovery from disasters. Rotary will oftentimes go into places where there's been an earthquake, or where there's been a tidal wave or a hurricane, and we provide assistance to getting those communities up and running again. Well, there is now a disaster recovery fund that does those programs in general. And one other aspect of the Rotary Foundation I didn't depict here is that you can actually individually choose to support any individual global grant initiative that we're trying to do either in our district or other places. That's your choice. You have choices on how you do this. So in addition to the district grant money that comes back to us each year, we also get money that comes back to our district each year in the form of what's called the district designated fund. Now, the district designated fund is not a checking account that we can use to do whatever we want to do with it. There are specific things we can spend that money on, and there are specific things that we have to kind of stay within. Examples are, if you decide to have a global grant initiative within your club, and that's where your club works with a club in another country to do a project in another country. Those projects typically are for $30,000 products or projects and up. So they're big things. It's hard for an individual club to raise $30,000, but with this global grant program, the local club can raise money, the local clubs can find other clubs to partner with, then that money can then be matched by this district designated fund. And then our district designated fund can then be matched by the World Fund. Right now it's being matched in a little different way than it has in the past, but the World Fund gets involved as well. I'll go into that in a moment. We can use this district designated fund for different things. And I'll tell you how we've used them in the past. We've mostly used them for global grant initiatives. Occasionally when you're governor, you go to conferences and stuff, you meet with other governors and you find out about some great projects that other districts are working on. So our district has partnered with other clubs in our zone to do things in places like Africa and Mexico and even in our own country. And we can use the district designated fund for those projects once those projects have been approved by Rotary. We can also use our designated fund to support End Polio Now, as we've made the push recently towards the eradication of polio and finishing the job we started. We provided some of our DDF money to help the End Polio Now program. Over $230,000 we've had the discretion to do what we want to do with in our district through this fund. So in essence, you know, our annual fund in the district, the Rotary Foundation is the wallet that goes along with the organization to get to do the good in the world. And we can't do a lot of the things we do without it. The World Fund is ultimately the big money wallet that is available to match clubs and districts with their global grant projects. This is how, when you go to Rotary magazine and you see some of these huge projects that are done, this is where the big money is coming from. And I suppose, you know, there's probably a little bit of natural, you know, we're kind of at different places. I grew up in Central Illinois, and I basically grew up about 5 miles from where I'm sitting. I live in Rochester now, but I grew up in Springfield. I didn't see an ocean until I was 18. I just didn't get it. And I think a lot of times when you live in a place like Illinois, you don't necessarily think about the rest of the world that we live in. Human beings are all over the place. It's crazy. And we have to do things occasionally for people that we'll never meet or we don't know. That's what Rotary International means. It's not just putting on a barbecue for the local school district. It's more than that. It's also that too, though, because charity should begin at home. So I just feel like if 1.2 million people in the world were given a little something, we'd be a lot better off. We get the share money back based on contributions that were made 3 years ago. So we're having a pretty good year with grants this year. We're going to have a better year next year. We're going to have a better year the year after that because we raised the amount of money that went into the annual fund last year and the year before that. We've been on an upward trend. Where we're going to be in 3 years depends on what happens between now and the end of June. So we have about 65 days to go. I want everybody in this call to please at least have a few minutes in your club to remind your club that there's this thing called the Rotary Foundation. It's trying to do good in the world, and it needs everybody's support, especially now, because over the last few years. All the club presidents, in fact, will be getting a letter next week from our zone director and our trustee, future trustee president, John Germ and Floyd Lancia. They'll be getting a letter reminding them to please talk to their clubs about the foundation. Personally, I'm available to do those kinds of conversations, and it's really easy to do now because a lot of you are doing these wonderful Zoom meetings, and I can Zoom in right from my desk at the office, and I can do a presentation that's 5 minutes long. I can do a 20-minute long one. I don't like to talk more than that. But just a reminder that as I went back in the beginning, we all have things that we can control and things that we can influence, things that we can control and things that we can influence. I thought when I draw my rings, it reminds me of this planet. I can't influence a whole lot of what's going on Mars or Neptune or Venus or any of that stuff, but we can all have an impact here in our country and in our planet and our little communities that we take care of. So I don't know, I wanted to show you that. I wanted to let you know that, if you're giving money to the foundation, trust the foundation. It's not a bad charity. In fact, third parties have looked at this charity and say it's pretty good. Gets a 4-star rating from Charity Navigator. There's not very many charities that get the 4-star rating, and there's not any, I believe, other charities that have gotten it about 18 out of the last 20 years in the whole world. CNBC gave it one of the top 3 charities that make a difference in the world. I think we'll never be embarrassed by anything that this charity does with our money. And I talked to you about the Paul Harris points today. Let's just wrap this up. I'll quit talking, and I would like any of you to unmute if you've got a question, because I don't want to take up more than the time I'm allotted. So does anybody have anything that they wanted to share or ask?
Brian, there was a question in the chat
Okay.
about whether you could make your PowerPoint available.
Yeah. That's a good question. That's an easy one. Yes, I can.
Okay. And
I won't charge you any outrageous fee, but I will expect that you'll be at least a sustaining member if you ask me for that. Because I worked really hard on that. I think it's worth at least $100.
And that came from Janet Glavin from Peoria. So you might want to make a note to send that on over to Janet.
Janet, you got it.
Marge Ogle from Metro East Club has asked, where do presidents or presidents-elect go to find out who in the club has points or has donated to the Rotary Foundation?
That's a good question, and it's easy to find. Presidents and foundation chairs, and I think maybe treasurers, can go to Rotary. First you go into My Rotary, log in. My Rotary is the portal to get into any information that you're entitled to based on your role with the club. As long as Rotary knows that you're a club president or a club treasurer, they'll let you see some things that members don't get access to. And there is a report, if you go to Manage on Rotary.org, and then down the Manage, you'll see there's different ways to get to it. There's one, I think it's Rotary Central is probably one easy way to do it. But then when you go to Rotary Central, there's a drop down that says reports. And the report that shows you a lot of things is called your Foundation Banner Recognition Report for each club. And it'll show you in that report which member in your club currently, it'll show you what their year-to-date status is, if they've at least made any kind of contribution at all. $25 is what's called an every Rotarian every year contribution, anything above $25. If you contribute over $100, that's called a sustaining member contribution. And for somebody who gave over $1,000, that's a Paul Harris Society level contribution. But it'll show you that. It won't show the exact amount that they've given, though. For some reason, they've sort of cloaked that. They don't really want people to see, I guess, that, because I don't really want people to go around kicking people in the butt because they haven't given an extra $10 or something like that. I think it's best to always publicly thank the ones who give and make sure that they're recognized. there's all kinds of things we can do to recognize them too. I'll come to your club if one of your club members becomes a Paul Harris Society member. Paul Harris Society members are individuals who committed to give at least $1,000 to the Rotary Foundation programs over the next every year. That's $2.70 a day, by the way. I'll also come to your club if one of your members becomes a major donor, or we'll celebrate that at the district level when we can. In fact, we did that at the district conference, but we can only do that on a slide this year. But we like doing those kinds of things. And I love doing those kinds